Okay, so so the title of my talk is and it's state-sanctioned oppression on religious freedom in India, and I'm using two case studies. One is from the Citizenship Amendment Act of 2019, and the other one is as we speak, it's going on right now. It's called Love Jihad. So I will be talking about those two things as the case points here. So a couple of brief, outline here. Let's see. So two things, like I said, Citizenship Amendment Act, talking about key issues, facts, some myths, some violation of international laws, and the global fallout. Then love jihad. Can state really dictate who you should marry? That's pretty much the summary of this love jihad as we speak, and where it hinges on the religious freedom of individual, their freedom of choices. So we talk about that, and then importantly enough, how did we get here? And just so if I didn't get the background, this research is from India. So one of the largest democracies in the world, one of the second largest populated country in the world, and with host of issues as we speak. And we also didn't talk about response of the international community. So when we talk about the Citizenship Amendment, and I want to also time myself here, there are a couple of ways where individuals can gain citizenship in India. Like how I moved to America almost 15 years ago as a graduate student. I had to go through my own processes, through H-1B, all the visa processes that you go through to get to the citizenship route. Similarly, India also has, different ways where individuals can get citizenship. One is a citizenship by birth, the other is citizenship by descent, which is, if one of your parent happens to be a citizen, then you get the route to be a citizen. And again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go line by line or slide by slide. Always happy to answer questions once everything is done. The third would be citizenship by registration, which would be if an individual has been in the country for a prolonged period, without any criminal record, or those kind of things, then also you can get register yourself to be citizen. And then finally, citizenship by naturalization as well. So this is where we stand as of right now, right? As of 2019, rather. 2019, brought in a watershed moment for Indian, politics, I would say, where, Indian politics right now is governed by a right-wing Hindu nationalist government known as Bharatiya Janata Party, or in English, I could translate loosely to India's People Party. They are known to be extreme far right-wing politics, so as to speak of, and sort of wearing religion on the sleeve. India by the foundation is constitutionally a secular country, which means that the state and the religion should be separate, ideally speaking, if you're talking about a secular country. But that's not always the case when you have religiously dominated politics, taking the center stage. So they brought this law, which is called the Citizenship Amendment Act. What this act pretty much does in summary is that if you read just the highlighted words here, if you belong to Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Parsi, or Christian community from Afghanistan, Bangladesh, or Pakistan, and if you entered the Indian borders before 31st December of 2014, then you will not be treated as illegal immigrant, for the purpose of this act, which means you can have the route to gain citizenship. What this also does, if you pay attention closely to this law, what happens if you are a Muslim? What happens if you were a Jew? What happens if you were not practicing a religion, right? If you were an atheist, and then you happen to be belonging to these three countries and have happened to come to India for seeking refuge, then you shall not be treated as a legal immigrant anymore, right? Then you will be termed as an illegal immigrant, and for which you will enter to the detention center. So that's pretty much the summary of this law here, and I'll probably just give you a few more slides to give you a more pictorial view here. So that's what I showed you. If you happen to come from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, and you happen to arrive in India, you know, uh, and before 31st December 2014, been residing in the country for at least 5 years leading up to 2014. So technically, you should have been in the country from 2009 and before for you to get that immunity, so as to speak of. In which case you will not be treated as illegal immigrants. So what this does is, take for example, you have 100 people identified sample. Let's take it as a very simplistic example. In that population of 100 people, you find out there are 60 individuals who happen to be non-Muslims and 40 happens to be Muslims. Now, once this law has been in effect, which has been in effect since 10th of January 2020, once it's passed by the president, signed by the president, assented by the parliament, and all that process, then what happens due to the CAA, for the short of the Citizenship Amendment Act? The 60 undocumented non-Muslims, they get citizenship because the law allows them to get that because they happen to be non-Muslims, right? The Hindu, Sikh, Jew, Christian population, and the Sikh population. But what happens to those 40 undocumented Muslims, right? Or undocumented Jews or undocumented atheists, right? I'm using the example of Muslims here, but those other two dominations also apply here. They will not be getting citizenship and they will be termed as illegal immigrants. And as a result, they'll be sent to the detention center. So this is where, this is one thing where the government has tried to mislead a lot of public, right? They want people to appreciate the fact that we are giving citizenship to these 60 undocumented non-Muslims, right? So it's called like an act of commission, right? So they want people to appreciate that, which is fine. We appreciate, people getting citizenship based on those laws. But what happens to those who are not getting citizenship, right? Or who are being termed as illegal immigrants, which is the act of omission, which is where the government does not want you to address, right? And that's where the civil rights activists and people who fight for human rights are vociferously, standing up against for that. So that's where one of the narrative comes from in terms of the how the CAA hinges on the religious freedoms, in the country. What it also does, it is also against the constitution of the very republic that we have. For example, Article 14, which talks about the right to equality under law, and which basically says that no, it's the state shall not deny to any person equality before the law or the equal protection of the laws within the territory of India. Now, mind you, this does not say any citizen. This says any person. So you don't have to be a citizen so as to get the to avail the equality of law, right? If you are a human being, you're a person, you are in India, then equality of law is supreme for anybody. But clearly, the CAA does not do that because it uses religious as an underpin to define the citizenship of an individual. Similarly, you have Article 21, which is the right to life and liberty. Then it says no person shall be deprived of his life or personal liberty, again, except according to the procedure established by the law. This Article 421 of the Indian Constitution has also been interpreted in different legal precedents about as a right to live with dignity. Now, just because you have been termed as illegal immigrant due to your religion, mind you, then clearly it's stripping off your dignity to even say that I am a Muslim or I'm a Jew or I'm an atheist, and therefore, you should be treating me as equal. But that doesn't happen due to because of this very law here. So that's a problem there in terms of the jurisprudence of India. Then also, in terms of Article 25, which is a protections for religious freedom, which says that all persons, and again, they don't use the word categorically citizen. I mean, Indian Constitution is also one of the finest constitutional documents you'll see. It says that all persons are equally entitled to freedom of conscience and right freely to profess, practice, and propagate religion. So now clearly, if you're again using religion as an underpinning to identify, if you're going to be eligible for being a citizen or not, that clearly violates the Article 25 also of the Indian Constitution. And finally, Amendment 42nd, which basically talks about that how India is known to be a secular state, but clearly the moment you use religion as a way to distinguish people, it obviously violates that. Internationally, also the CAA violates, some of the regulations or the covenants. For example, the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1948, Article 5, 9, and 14, which pretty much I won't read line by line, but talks about it how individuals you cannot treat religion as a basis to distinguish between different benefits that individuals are supposed to get. Similarly, International Covenant on Political, Civil, and Political Rights, which pretty much talks about that how we cannot discriminate people on the basis of race, color, language, religion, political opinion, in order for them to be seeking refuge in a country, which also then so the citizenship law brought about by the Hindu nationalist government, which I often call a saffron supremacist, violates that as well. So just from a very now from a logistical standpoint, right? If you can't produce a document like today, if I'm an Indian, so I can't produce my document, then one could question my citizenship status. But now because I happen to be a Hindu faith, then I will not be in trouble, right? So as to speak of, if that makes sense here. In India, due to the poverty, right, due to the lack of education, lack of literacy, there are logistical challenges in itself to even implement this law. If they were to implement it, I mean, its law is already there on the books now. What this slide that you see right now shows that how many individuals in India do not have a death certificate or a birth certificate, right? For example, Uttar Pradesh, which is one of the largest, populated state in India with a very highest Muslim population actually also in the state, about 62% of the people do not have a birth certificate, right? 38% of those do not have a death certificate. And this is despite the law that exists on the books, which is from 1969, which basically constitutionally mandates people to have those certificates. Now, in what happens that 68% of the individuals who don't have the certificate, and again, if they happen to be from Muslim, Jews, or atheist population, one could potentially say question their citizenship, right? And that's why people would say that people who are from the minority religion are inadvertently also they do also face risk on that aspect here. So this is where it says, it will be naive for us to ignore the disproportionate impact of NRC, the National Register Citizenship, under the present situation. It will hurt the vulnerable and weaker section of the society. So there will be international fallout, obviously, from different intellectuals, from different organizations, who have spoken against the CAA and called out the Indian government to repeal the law, to respect religious freedom of the individuals. Now, this leads me to the second topic here, and I'll be wrapping up soon now. It's called love jihad, which is the Uttar Pradesh, as I mentioned, one of the largest state in India, also with the largest Muslim population in the state, most populous state actually. It's also called the UP, Prohibition of Unlawful Conversion of Religious Ordinance. So that's the legal name of the law, but rhetorically, it's also called love jihad. What the love jihad is basically it's a dog whistle. It's a right-wing propaganda tool of the Hindutva, which is the right-wing, Hindutva nationalist, right-wing nationalist folks, to describe interfaith marriages, interfaith relationship between a Muslim man and a Hindu woman. And that is outrageous. I mean, that's troubling. When we're talking about a secular country, when you're talking about all the articles that I just mentioned as respect to the CAA, right? Article 14, 21, 25, you know, it is deeply troubling for the state now to be interfering into who you can marry, particularly based on religion. So there are 4 to 5 states at this point who are in the process of implementing the law. There are, in terms of the punishment, you have to 5 years of 5-year jails for violators one state. In another state they have up to 1 to 10 years of imprisonment, with up to fine of about 10,000 to 50,000 Indian rupees, which translates to around 200 to 700 dollars, US dollars, under different categories. And this ordinance is despite the High Court, the Allahabad's High Court, from a couple of days ago only, where basically it says that the love jihad law is unconstitutional. So the High Court is already saying that, but despite that, the Chief Minister of the state, who is also a radical far right minister, the Yogi Adityanath, who's bringing this law here, who's already in the process of, who's already brought this law successfully so. So this is where it leads us, that now you are starting to see a lot of individuals speaking against the law, right? Speaking and about how equality of law is important, how holding up the constitutional rights is important. But the one last question that I leave you all with here, and I can take questions and answers in our comment section, is how did we get here, right? Because now we're talking about religious freedoms here. For that, I'll just have this one last slide here, talking about tracing the history of the current political party that is ruling India, right? I believe most of our panelists here are from America, so I can use the example of KKK, right? How many of you know about the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan, as an example? So the Indian RSS started in 1925. The whole thesis of RSS was that they wanted to see India as a Hindu state, you know. So that is where you see that how the RSS, which is the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, believes in India as a Hindu Rashtra. They were also responsible. One of the members belonging to the RSS was responsible for assassination of the father of India, Mahatma Gandhi. I'm sure, I hope everyone is aware of the name here. They have been banned thrice in our country for their activities related to communal disharmony, communal violences. One of the founders, so that RSS, led to the Bharatiya Jan Sangh, which is the political wing of RSS, so as to speak of. The Bharatiya Jan Sangh started in 1951, and that led to in 1980, after the emergency, in the political emergency in India, that led to the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is the right now the currently the political party which is the ruling the India for the second term at this point in succession. So this is where when we see, that how you have this 100-year project starting with 1925 to where we are. So that's where I would leave you here. Some of the recommendations, again, in the interest of time, I won't speak one by one on that. But thank you very much on that note. Thank you very much for listening to my conversation here.